We're going to move to question number 2 that I'd like you to answer, and that is, how does what you believe, and we put it down negatively, how does it affect your life today? So, do you remember, I'm going to write it down in a minute, but do you remember when we went over all those common beliefs as you were telling me the different ones, and we stopped at number 7? And I said, and I circled a bunch of them and said, how would it be to be married to this person? How would it be, what would it be like being your spouse with your beliefs? Even for you unmarried guys, what would it be like for you? How does this stuff affect how you run a council meeting? Because if you don't trust people, you won't want to tell them what needs to be said. Also, if you don't trust them, you won't tend to want to let them deliberate through issues to get the whole council. You understand? Now, by the way, what's the effect of that? The effect of that is they won't trust you because you don't trust them. Whereas when people are faithful and they're trusted and they know that you include them, they feel valuable and they trust you. I'll have people come to me and say, you know, so-and-so, there's no way in that church that I can ever become a part of the leadership of that church. Well, why? Well, the pastor only has his family as leaders in that church. Well, sometimes with church planting, it's the only people we can get to fill those spots. Do you understand what I mean? And quite frankly, I mean, me and my family we were the worship team, we were the preaching, we were the janitors. We set up on Saturday night. We cleaned up. This boy has cleaned a lot of toilets a lot of time. I weeded the gardens out in front because I wanted them to look beautiful for the people. Changed light bulbs, did maintenance. You understand? But, yeah. But did it stay that way? No. I found faithful people that we entrusted. First one was get me off the worship team. Now, by the way, nobody ever complained. I did, though. I don't want to be the one guy that does it all. So I found someone. I mean, by the way, dude, I would have, if we were at a pastor's conference and I had those two guys over there leading worship, I'd be, I don't care what Pastor Sareka says. Would you like to come to my church? Whatever he pays you, I'll pay you $10 more, all right? You know? No, of course I wouldn't do that without his permission. You gave it to me, right? Anyway, but you understand, I knew that I needed to work myself out of some of those issues. I also knew, even though we had an untrustworthy council, I needed faithful people that could be trusted. And that I needed to learn to trust them. So I tried working with an unfaithful council, which we clashed for a year on, 2 years. Thank God. I don't know how you do it in the UK, but in Foursquare in the US, half of the council goes off every year. Yay! You just have to outlive them. Isn't that right? Just outlive them if you get a Ken Tankers one, because it's hard to remove them. You understand? And also, I don't put people in positions to make them feel better about themselves, because it'll go south really fast. But can you see, when we were talking about those common beliefs, if you had a bunch of those together, how it would all work together and affect your pastoring? So when we deal with this question, Q2, and you're going to find a space, you have 2 more pages on that fold, huh? I don't care how you fold it, just fold it again. And question 2 is, how Does what I believe affect my life today? So I think of effects of, if I believe, I'm just going to use some examples. Some of these things affect yourself directly. If I believe I'm responsible for everything, then that means every rotten thing that happens at church is my fault. And by the way, then somebody else comes along that's one of the people that are a part of the church and tells me it's my fault, and I buy into it quickly, even though it might have nothing to do with me. How many of you understand what I'm saying? Okay, so how's that going to affect me? Well, in this case, it's just an example. I'm going to bear stress. I'm going to be cranky. Those would be effects, wouldn't they? How am I going to be as a husband? Well, Benita, don't you understand I need to study? I know you want to hold hands and you want to talk, but can you just talk to Jesus for a little while? Because I need to solve these problems. But I'm overly responsible, so she's going to say, but Robbie, you always have a problem to solve. Come on? Any of you getting anything out of this? So, my life is way out of balance with my family. And they try and lovingly shape me into balance. And I resist them because she's pushing on my over-responsibility. But that's, to me, the only way to live. When I was a kid, I wouldn't have survived if I hadn't become overly responsible. But 1 Corinthians 13:11, now it's killing me. You understand? Okay? So it's affecting, I did this gender specific to me, but I should have put marriage. But how's it affect the time I spend with them? Also, listen, we can become pretty disconnected in the way we talk to our spouse. We talk about church. Do we talk about them? Benita wants me to have a life outside of an organization that I pastor. Do you understand? She knows I love them. She loves them too. But she wants me to love her. And by the way, I like her to love me. I have overworked, actually Benita, if she was in the room, she's right outside the room taking care of something. But if she was in here, she would be giving me a bad look right now. Because I used past tense to say I used to overwork. I still overwork. How many of you, if you were being honest, would say, Robbie, I overwork too? Okay, all right, near everyone. And unfortunately, the place that has the give is usually home. But the only way that we can convey love is time. But I only have 24 hours in the day. For the love of God, woman, what do you expect out of me? To sleep 4 hours a day? Because I still need sleep. I need to eat. I need to do the church work. And then she gives. Now, if you looked at me and you looked at my normal life, and my normal life is not this week, okay? You'd see I take a day off every week. I have a Sabbath. Do you understand? And in my life, just like in yours, it's very difficult. I want to suggest that if you have no Sabbath, and you won't like this, but if you have no Sabbath, you're possibly over-pastoring. Do you understand? Maybe somebody else can help with this responsibility or that. Some of you are mad at me even right now. I can see that. No, I'm teasing you. I don't see the look in your face. I'm just concerned for how long can you pay this kind of price and do well? Because eventually your mind will say, I'm taking a vacation. Now I want to be honest with you. I talk to a lot of pastors who have problems with pornography. It's almost universal. All of them, good people, all of them hate what they're doing. But all of them overwork. So you know what their brain's doing? Hey, when I'm thinking about that, I'm not thinking about all that. Brain's saying, I know how to take a Sabbath if you won't give me one. Now, it's not a good place to take a Sabbath, don't you agree? Come on. But I'm telling you, it's part of the 10 Commandments. You understand? So where in our life, where is how you are, how is what you believe affecting your relationship with your spouse? How about your relationship with your children? Huh? So we have time with our spouse, but also what do we talk about? Now, Benita and I happen to both love church. So we like talking about you, huh? Remember I said in a positive way, huh? And we'll talk about you guys for days to come. We talked about you last night. We talked about you this morning. We talked about you at mealtime. Why? We like you. I talked about Sean. I went to bed singing for about an hour after he got us all wound up. The adrenaline was flowing with some of those songs. Isn't that right? Okay. How does it affect your church? When we don't have time to hardly seek the Lord because we're being so responsible, sometimes I need to be able to say no to someone. I need to not answer the phone in the middle of the night. By the way, I came here and I turned off my cellular. What I didn't know is because I have broadband, people still call me from the United States. Guess when the phone's ringing? 2 in the morning. Are you kidding? Hey, Pastor, I know it's only 6 o'clock, but I thought I'd still call you before dinner. I'm not having dinner right now. But I'll let you know this. I didn't answer the phone. I have a recording. I'm out of the country right now. I will return on and gave the date. If they need to contact me, email me. Okay? People get that. I'm not mad at people for not knowing my boundaries. I establish my boundaries, do you hear me? On what's healthy. And I just live them out in love. Huh? Make sense? In other words, I don't tell them, hey, you're crossing my boundaries, you're asking too much. No, they'll always ask you too much. You set your boundaries kindly. Yes? Stop blaming them for your imbalance. What kind of neighbor are you? Because of how you live. How do you resolve things? So how does what you believe affect your life today? Got it? Yeah. How many of you know what I'm asking? Raise your hand. Okay, all of you do. Okay. I'm going to only give you 15 minutes this time. So we're going to start right now. Go for it and find a place to answer that question on your paper. Q2, question 2. So I wonder if you would select 2 of yours and share them with someone at the table and let them share 2 of theirs with you. And what you would be doing is sharing the event that happened, that's the Post-it note, and then telling them what your resulting belief and effect is. And then letting them tell you theirs. How many of you understand? It's pretty clear. Okay, all you're doing is sharing with another. But that does require trust. Listen, I don't happen to use the system that I'm about to share, but one of the interventions that is seen working in dealing with people that in trauma, that if they tell their story 50 times, it greatly diminishes the hurt that's in them, especially if that person that's listening happens to care. You understand? So Some of you have told this story before to other people. Some of you have never told that story to people. Well, I want to say this. If somebody is about to tell you their story, be trustworthy. Be safe. This is not the time to give advice. One of the things that we train for disaster relief workers is when you're in an area, a critical incident area that's happened where homes have been destroyed, families have been killed, etc., and you're being asked to go in, listen and only speak if when you know what you're about to say has greater value than your care of listening. Do you hear me? Only speak when you're sure that what you have to say has greater value than the manner in which you care by listening. So in other words, listen, care, don't talk. Great time to be quiet. So this would be a time, sorry my alarm's going off here. This would be a time for you when they're talking to listen. And what I'll do is I'm going to set my timer for 5 minutes. That means one of you has 5 minutes to share one story with the story, the belief, and the effect, and a second story if you can work it in that 5 minutes. And then at 5 minutes we'll flip it to the other person that you're talking with. Okay? Now, let me give you an example of mine. You, by the way, will be the only group in the entire universe that has ever heard some of these things of my story. Hey, I do like you, huh? All right? And I trust you. So my mother would leave us alone a lot. We had no father in the home, and my mother, because she was seeking to drink water that would fulfill her through a man, would go on dates and sometimes, and this is before cell phones, be gone for 2 days. We had no idea where she was, and we had no food in the house. So this boy has, though I had a dad who was wealthy living 15 miles away, had 3 airplanes and 2 Mercedes-Benz and a nice custom home in Orange County, his son was walking down as a little boy with my just older sister to the grocery store trash can, seeing if we could find vegetables that were thrown out that we could take home and cook. I was not old enough to look on the counter without getting on my tiptoes, so I would have been that age. So if I then feel alone, and that was my single word of my belief on part of that, was it left me feeling alone and uncovered. The effect I put is that I tend to want to accuse those closest to me of not spending rightful time with me. In other words, I'm alone, you don't spend time with me, but the paradigm needed to change when I got married, so that Benita does not bear my belief from my past and pay the price of what someone else would have otherwise paid. Does that make sense to you? Want to hear one more? How many of you want to hear one more? Okay, because I'm going to share 2. I'm sucking up your time. The third one, and that is we were left unprotected, and there was a sense of another sense of aloneness. However, I then tend to be overprotective of my kids. Do you realize, by the way, if you're overreactive in your overprotection of your kids, they won't trust you? They'll stop talking to you. So here's an example. I mean, your child is in first grade or something, and the teacher says something that, at least that's what your child is coming home and says the teacher said something that irritates you, and think, by God, I'm not going to leave my kids unprotected. I'm going to go down there and take on the school board and the principal and the teacher, and I'm after their throats. You know what that kid's thinking? I'll never tell mom or dad again. They might have even said, no, please don't, please don't. You're going to embarrass me. No, I'm going to prove to you I'm here because I love you and I'm protecting you. No, you're not. You're humiliating me. You understand? Overprotective. And so It can cause rebellion. Then I'm thinking of how it affects my family. If I'm overprotective, it can cause them to not want to share with me. And it can cause them to rebel against me because it can turn into over-control. Also, others around me in church can sometimes feel I don't trust them if I'm constantly hovering over in an overprotective way, even though to me that would be care. Does that make sense to any of you? By the way, anyone relate to any part of what I just shared? Raise your hand if you do. Yeah, okay, all right. So here's what I want you to do. Now, I'm not going to share all of mine with you. I was just sharing 2 of them, and I actually didn't tell you the whole event, and because I'm trying to keep it short, but briefly the belief and briefly the effect. So I'd like you to break into groups of 2, and how about I'm only going to give you 4 minutes? That means 2 minutes each issue. And then we're going to flip it to your person. Okay? All right, you know what you're supposed to do? Sit down with that person.